Hey everybody, very welcome back to In Forest and Lands. Behind me is a beautiful lake and in front of me is the beautiful Ida Olsson.
Hello everyone.
There we go. And we're just back from our latest canoe adventure in a melm in Sweden. One of the most requested videos that we've had this month on the channel is knife maintenance. Now, I do believe there's a difference between maintenance and sharpening, and I think those who are into sharpening would agree with me that sharpening is an art form unto itself, but knife maintenance is just something that everybody can do when they're coming back from an adventure or going to an adventure or before you store your knives away in a drawer. So I'm going to share that with you now. This particular knife in my hand is the Helle Norlys with this beautiful John Jeffreis custom Catapult's bead on the end of it. It glows in the dark. This thing, next to a Hollywood actor's ego, can be seen from space. So one of the things that I wanted to do first off is actually take a knife that I have used and that is I'm going to maintain. Normally I would maintain this in my home, but this is a pretty beautiful surrounding here. First off, I have my field maintenance kit with me. It's got a good cloth in it. It could be a bandana or a shamag. Try and avoid microfiber cloths. You want something that's pre-washed linen like this one from Helle here, but any cloth will do. You don't want those microfiber cloths or those cotton kitchen towels because as you apply your oils and your greases, those fibers are going to come off and they're going to get in it. So a pre-washed cloth or bandana is perfect for when you're out in the field. First off, I'm just going to take my cloth and I'm just going to give the sheet a wipe. Make sure it's dry. Take all this dust off it. And you can see this has had some canoe marks. It's actually bent over from sitting in the canoe. Myself and Ida paddled 12 kilometers on a guided tour, guiding some beautiful folks from the UK across the beautiful lakes in Sweden. So once that is done, I will then take either a beeswax-based oil, which is in my kit. I use Adler Balm. Personally, this one is fantastic. It does your axe handles, it can protect your steel, it'll do your axe masks, and a knife and an axe, there's not really much difference between the two when it comes to material properties. And it's again a beautiful oil developed for axes and is beeswax based and smells absolutely beautiful. I'm going to take my cloth. I'm just going to gather a small bit, not loads. And anything that's beeswax based is going to take a moment to heat up. So you just want to get it warm in the tin. And as you can see, I'm not taking much off there. I'm going to get my sheet. I'm just going to apply it nice and finely. It doesn't have to be clumpy or all over the place. The reason why we oil our sheet is leather is a living material. It has pores, it stretches as it gets wet. It can change shape. It can take on water. We just don't want that to happen. So as I'm going, I'm just doing it. The reason why I like to do this with my knife in the sheet is because if by accident you replace or place too much oil on your sheet, you're not going to change the shape of it or wet form it. We can get that to where it needs to be. There's never any rush with these knife maintenance things. There is the flesh side to leather and the hide side. And you can see here, basically, there's the smooth and the hairy bits. The hairy bits need a bit of special attention. The smooth parts, not so much. But those hairy bits, you want to just make sure you get the oil a little bit into them, especially around the welt and the belt loop. Then I'll take the dry part of my cloth and just give it one more wipe. And my sheet is back to go. Now, if I was at home, I would take that sheet and I would leave it to one side and I would let it sit there and let the oil soak in, and then I'd go back and give it either one more go with oil if it needed it in some dry bits, or I'd give it a cloth to remove some excess oil. Now, I always start with the knife of my blade before I start with the handle. If your handle is micarta based, it's still a porous material. There are still holes in micarta. The only handle that doesn't really need any treatment is kind of G10, but the rest are all natural living materials like micarta and wood and bone and so forth. But first I start with my blade. This is a little cheeky tip This is alcohol, hand sanitizer gel for want of a better word. This was just left in our bags from the canoe course this weekend, so I'm using this one. But if you have a bit of alcohol to hand, it actually helps clean your blade. This was chopping lemons, it was making sail needles, it was in the water sometimes when it shouldn't have been, and now it's back out. The steel is 14C28N, so you can see it hasn't patinaed up with any rust or rust spots. But it is covered in pine tar, acidic chemicals from things like lemons and oranges and potatoes and starchy material like that, and it's all tacked up and gunked up. So a very quick way to get that off is to again take your rag, give it an old squirt, and alcohol gel or hand sanitizer gel will take away all that pine tar, all that resin, no problem. And also, it's not going to sit on your blade. It'll evaporate and take it up. Always be careful. As you see, when I'm maintaining my blade, although I may not look it on camera, I'm always working down towards the edge, never pulling my cloth back. And if I'm working from this angle, I'm always working towards the tip. Never try and clean your knife this way or this way. Just always from the top towards the tip. And when you come off your knife, you want to come off in a smooth movement. If there's a piece of dirt on there that's been a bit stubborn, it's your outdoor knife. It's not a collector's samurai sword that's going to end up in the Royal Armouries in the UK. It's a working tool. So I wouldn't worry about a bit of pine sap or a bit of stuff on my knife. So once the blade is clean, I'll take a look down it. And before I go hitting that with any oil, I'll take a look at the handle. As you can see, some of my handle I use this knife a lot. Around here is a little dry. There's some oil sitting here. For the handle, you can use your beeswax based materials here, or you can use a boiled linseed oil should you prefer. For the moment now, I'm just going to stick with my beeswax based oil because I already have that on my cloth. And for those who don't know the different types of linseed oil, boiled and so on, those rags have to be disposed of very, very carefully, because they can become very flammable. So put them in a bucket of water if you're using them around camp, or put them on the fire, but don't be carrying them home in your Jeep or in your bags. So once I have a bit of my oil, I'm just going to, again, with my knife pointing away from me, just give that handle a bit of a treat. Be careful now, because your hands can become tacky. Get all those bits. Especially those shoulders. The shoulders can become very dry, and that is sometimes open grain, depending on the handle material. Take the dry part of your cloth and just give it a wipe. These handles already come, most, if you're buying handles from a knife manufacturer, will come sealed, but you just want to give it a light coating. And as you can see, my handle is changing color now because the wood is absorbing the beeswax based oil. Getting it where it needs to be, those areas of attention. Now, the reason why I don't do the blade until last is because I've used my rag to oil my handles, and I've used my rag to oil my sheath. So then I just want to take that almost barely any material left in the rag there. There's barely any oil in it, and there's barely any beeswax based material in it. And then all I'm simply going to do is turn my blade so that the edge faces away from me, approach it from the spine, and just give my blade a quick wipe. Then I'm going to let that sit for a second, and then I'm going to give it a wipe with the dry part. And then that is more than enough oil for a blade. Any more oil than that, you're going to cause yourself problems. Anybody who's oiled their blade and put it back in the sheath and put it away to take it back out to find it rusty is because they've put too much oil on the blade. You only need a very small film. And in fact, most of the time I use my knife so much, I prefer not to over oil or put any oil near my blade. The alcohol sanitizer is about as far as I go with that one. But that's a nice thin layer. And the reason for this is that if you over oil your blade, you will get a small microscopic layer of trapped water and trapped air between the heavy oil and the blade. And then that's what happens when you take your blade back out. You're like, oh, I oiled it, but there's still spots. It will trap moisture underneath it, especially in humid environments. So a small little wipe like that is totally fine. And then I'll let my knife sit and just do its thing. If you're only going on adventures every now and again, or you have a lot of knives that you rotate in your collection, it is always best practice to store it outside of the sheath. That can be a problem too, because there could be moisture in your sheath that you haven't spotted, and you put it away and it's just sitting there absorbing around it. These are natural materials that we are using on our knives, and as such are from nature and have different properties depending on the knife that you use. So just treat it with the respect that it needs and perform these small 15-minute knife maintenance routines, and you'll have a knife that will last you for life. Until the next video, peace.